You don't qualify. You never did.
I run this office. I decide who is fit. You are not fit.
Get out of my building.
You don't qualify. You never did. Get out of my building.
The word building lands like a gavel, but the hand is the more violent fact.
I run this office. I decide who is fit. You are not fit.
Harlan Voss grips her arm above the elbow and rocks her back one step on the pale grey linoleum. The fluorescent hum above them, that is the only sound left. A lobby full of people. 40 eyes. Nobody moves. A woman near the plastic chairs lets a paper cup stop halfway to her mouth and keeps it there. She steadied herself.
The building you just claimed as your own, all 4 floors of it, every pale gray millennium tile, every buzzing fluorescent tube, belongs to the woman you grabbed by the arm.
What do you think the boss will do when he hears that?
A black woman in her 50s, full-figured and upright, burgundy cardigan over a white collar, salt and pepper natural, close to her skull. She did not fall. She did not speak. She pressed the leather binder to her chest and looked at the hand on her arm the way you look at something you have already decided not to react to. Voss leaned in, his jaw forward, his forehead vein up and pulsing. I run this office. I decide who is fit. You are not fit. He pulled the binder from her grip with his left hand, held it out at arm's length, like it smelled. And take this with you, whatever this is, but here's what Harlan Voss didn't know. The building he just claimed as his, all 4 floors of it, every pale grey linoleum tile, every buzzing fluorescent tube, is owned by the woman he is pushing toward the door. Owned through a $2.1 million land trust. And the lease renewal that keeps his lights on crosses her desk in 3 weeks. Have you ever watched someone try to throw out the person who owns the house? Before we get to that moment, let me take you back 23 years to the first child Lorraine Webb ever said yes to. That morning started at 6:45 a.m. South Memphis. A craftsman bungalow on a block of old magnolias. The sun had not yet cleared the roofline when Lorraine Webb was already at the kitchen table with the binder open in front of her. Color-coded tabs spread out like a filed argument she had spent 2 decades building. Red for the license records, blue for the financials, green for the correspondence. She pulled the lease renewal from the green section. Checked the date. Slid it back. She was not nervous. Lorraine Webb had never been nervous in a government office. She had been prepared in a government office. There is a difference, and she learned it early. This is where the story really starts. Not at the DCF's building. Not with Harlan Voss. It starts in 2001, in that same kitchen, at that same round oak table, with a 7-year-old boy named Darnell sitting across from her eating oatmeal and not saying a word. He had been placed with her 4 days before. His file said quiet. The caseworker who dropped him off said difficult. Lorraine made the oatmeal, put it in front of him, and sat down. She did not explain herself. She did not make promises. She just sat with him until he looked up. He looked up on day 6. You know what that takes. You know what it costs a person to sit across a table from a child who has already decided the world is not worth trusting, and to just stay there, day after day. Not performing warmth, not forcing connection, just being present like a fact that cannot be argued with. Lorraine had been doing that since 1999. That was her first placement, a 4-year-old girl named Tanya with a bruise behind her left ear that the intake file described as a fall. Lorraine called the intake supervisor the next morning and asked 3 questions in a row, so specific and documented that the supervisor called her back within the hour. Nobody had asked those questions before. Nobody had known to. By the time Tanya left, Lorraine had learned one thing that no training module teaches. The system moves fast when it wants to remove a child and slow when it wants to protect one. Paperwork was not bureaucracy. Paperwork was armor. She bought the binder that same week. 23 years, 11 children. One she buried, a teenager named Marcus, who died in a car accident 2 weeks after his 19th birthday, 6 months after he aged out of the foster system and came back to live with Lorraine anyway, because she was the only stable thing he had. She keeps his school photo on the corkboard in the kitchen. She has never moved it. She touches the gold ring on her right hand when she thinks about Marcus. You would not notice the ring unless you knew what it was. Plain 14-carat band, smooth except for the number 11 engraved on the inside face. One for each child. 11. She had it made the year Darnell graduated college. She does not think of herself as powerful. She thinks of herself as responsible. The inheritance came 4 years after Tanya. Her Aunt May passed at 84 and left Lorraine 3 commercial properties in a city trust. May had bought them during urban renewal when the city was acquiring black neighborhoods at below market rates and nobody with capital was fighting back. May fought back with her own capital. She bought instead of selling. She held for 30 years. And when she died, she told Lorraine, she had told her this more than once, but she said it again in the letter she left with the deed. Never let anything that could help people become something that only helps yourself. The May Webb Community Land Trust. That is what Lorraine named it. 3 properties, $14 million assessed value as of last year. The DCF's Regional Services Building is the largest of them. All 4 floors. Lorraine has leased it to the city at $318,000 annually since the agency moved in 9 years ago. For the last 3 years, while the agency ran underfunded and the director's office was filing budget appeals, she charged nothing. $0. She renewed the lease at $0 and did not announce it. She has spent $47,000 of her own money on foster care over those same 23 years. Unreimbursed, school clothes, bus passes, doctor visits that the state reimbursement formula did not cover. She kept the receipts in the blue section of the binder. The lease renewal is in the green section. By 8:58 a.m., she had parked outside the DCF's Regional Services Building and was walking in through the glass door, binder under her arm. The lobby was already moving. Clients in the blue plastic chairs. Caseworkers logging in behind the pale wood counter. The rubber plant in the far left corner, unmoved, the fluorescent hum. She signed in at the lobby desk at 9:14 a.m. The front desk caseworker, the young black woman in the green blouse with the tortoise-shell glasses and the locks, Maya Osei, looked at the name on the check-in sheet and typed it in without reaction. Lorraine settled into one of the plastic chairs with the binder on her lap and waited. Harlan Voss appeared from the second-floor stairwell at 9:09 a.m. You have met someone like him. You have met the person who enters a room and immediately begins doing the math on everyone in it, who is worth their time, who isn't, who they can move past without engagement. Voss did that math in under 3 seconds. He had done it the same way for 9 years at that desk. The badge reel clicked against his chest. His red and navy tie was slightly off-center. His cap-toe Oxfords had a scuff on the left toe he had not noticed or had decided not to care about. He looked at the lobby. He looked at the sign-in sheet without picking it up. He looked at Lorraine. He looked away. If you have been watching this channel for a while, you already know the pattern. You already know something is coming that Harlan Voss cannot see. Hit subscribe if this is the kind of story that gets your blood moving. Because we are just getting started. At 9:17 a.m., Voss called her name. Not from his office. Not from a conference room. He called it from behind the reception counter, the same counter where clients checked in and caseworkers took calls, in front of every person in that lobby, as though her appeal was a scheduling inconvenience. Lorraine stood, straightened her cardigan, picked up the binder, and crossed to the counter. She set it down. Opened it to the license history tab. 23 years of documented placements, home visits, state evaluations, every single one clean. Voss was holding a single printed sheet. He did not look at the binder. He looked at the sheet. Mrs. Webb. His voice was even. Professionally even, the kind of even that has been practiced. I've reviewed the complaint on file. A neighbor of record submitted a grievance in September, and based on the nature of the allegations, I have the response to that complaint, Lorraine said. It's tabbed. Right side, red section, third document. Voss put one finger on the cover of the binder. He slid it back toward her across the counter without opening it. Without glancing at the contents, slow, deliberate. The way you push away a plate you didn't order. I don't need your paperwork. I have the complaint. The caseworker to Voss's left, the stocky man in the tan corduroy blazer, Ray Delgado, stopped typing. His hands came off the keyboard. The young woman in the green blouse, Maya, kept her eyes on her screen, but her fingers had slowed to the pace of someone who has stopped thinking about what she is typing. Lorraine did not pull the binder back. She left it exactly where it was. Mr. Voss, she said. Quietly, I have documentation going back to 1999. I have 11 completed placements. I have 12 state evaluations, all satisfactory or above. I would ask that you, ma'am. He said it the way you cut a sentence in half. A complaint has been filed. Protocol doesn't require me to review supplemental materials when the primary documentation supports revocation. Lorraine touched the gold ring on her right hand. Just her thumb, pressing the band against the inside of her finger. One small pressure. She said nothing. And here's what you need to understand about that silence. It was not surrender. It was not confusion. It was the silence of a woman who has sat across from children who had been told they were nothing, and who had learned over 23 years that the person who fills every silence with noise is almost never the person who wins. The fluorescent light buzzed. The vein in Voss's forehead was up. Lorraine looked at the binder on the counter between them. She looked at Voss. She left the binder there. What happened next is the part you don't forget. Voss picked up the sheet again, not to read from it. He had already read from it. He picked it up the way a prosecutor holds up evidence before a jury he has already decided he owns. He raised his voice just enough. Not shouting. Projecting, the kind of voice that wants to be heard 3 rows back. This isn't a file review, Mrs. Webb. This is a courtesy notification. The revocation stands. The linoleum carried his voice across the lobby. Not an echo. A broadcast. 2 clients in the blue plastic chairs turned. One of them, a young woman with a stroller parked beside her knee, went very still. Voss kept going. He read from the sheet. Noise grievance, September 14th. Overcrowding allegation, unsubstantiated but noted. He presented them as findings, not allegations, findings. And here is the thing about unsubstantiated allegations in a government complaint. If you say them loudly enough in a public space, in front of enough people, the word unsubstantiated falls away. What stays is the image. A heavy woman in a cardigan in a lobby. A supervisor reading from a document. Unfitness. Rendered as administrative fact. Lorraine felt the edge of the counter against the pads of her fingers. Smooth, slightly cool, like the underside of a stone. She did not remove her hands. Mr. Voss, she kept her voice at a conversational level. This was important. She had learned it from a family attorney once. If you raise your voice in a government office, you become the story. The noise grievance was filed by a tenant who later recanted. That recantation is documented in the red section. The overcrowding allegation was reviewed by State Inspector Sandra Mills on October the 3rd and classified as unsubstantiated. Her review is also in the red section. Voss looked at the binder. He did not open it. "I've noted your objection," he said. The vein in his forehead was pronounced now, visible from 5 feet back. It showed up, Lorraine would learn later, when he was most certain he had won. It was a tell in the wrong direction. He thought it was confidence. It was a tell. Ray Delgado had taken a half step back from the counter. His right hand was on the edge of his desk, but not pressing it. Not detaching. Holding on. The young woman with the stroller had turned all the way in her plastic seat and was watching. "The revocation is effective as of Monday," Voss continued. "You'll receive written notice within 72 hours. If you wish to appeal to the state level, you have 30 days, and the contact information is—" "I'm not leaving," Lorraine said. Not loud. Not aggressive. She said it the way you state a weather condition. Silence. Voss looked at her. For the first time in this conversation, he actually looked at her. Took her in. The binder. The cardigan. The ring on the right hand. The stillness. Whatever he was looking for, he did not find it reassuring. "Mrs. Webb, back to flat. This conversation is concluded. If you choose not to leave voluntarily, I am requesting a supervisor review. That's my right, under Tennessee Code 371144. I'd like to file that request in writing before I leave." Ray Delgado's hand pressed the desk. He was not going to say anything. He had worked here long enough to know what happened to people who pushed back on Voss's decisions in public. But his hand pressed the desk and his jaw was tight. Voss set the sheet down. He straightened his tie with one finger. Slightly off-center. Slightly more off-center. "There is no supervisor review available at this stage. The decision has been made. You know that feeling, that specific, suffocating feeling when a person in authority looks you in the face and tells you that the thing they are doing is not happening. When the rule they are citing does not exist, or exists differently than they are describing it, and you know it, and they know you know it, and they are saying it anyway because the power in the room is theirs and yours is not visible yet." Lorraine knew it. She had felt it before, in different rooms, with different faces behind the desk. She pressed the gold band with her thumb one more time. She was placing a marker. Not for Voss. For herself, at 9:22 a.m. Voss came out from behind the counter. This was the moment. This was when every caseworker in that lobby understood what was about to happen and chose, each of them, what to do with that understanding. Most of them chose to find something else to look at. Voss walked to where Lorraine stood. He was close, 1.5 feet. His height gave him 3 inches over her. He had used that geometry before. You could tell, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." He said it quietly now. Intimate, a manager giving a final warning. Lorraine looked at him. "Voluntarily, or I will need to assist you." His right hand came up and closed on her arm above the elbow. Firm. Not a tap. Not a guiding gesture. A grip. The kind that communicates something specific to the person it is applied to and to anyone watching. Lorraine did not resist. She did not flinch. She looked at his hand on her arm, then up at his face, then at the lobby full of people watching all of it happen. Maya Osei's hands were flat on the desk. Her mouth was open. She did not speak. Ray Delgado's hand was still on the edge of his desk. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He was not proud of that, not then, not later. Lorraine set the leather binder on the counter. Deliberately, both hands. Clasped side up, she stepped back from it, and Voss misread the gesture completely. He picked it up with his left hand. He held it at arm's length, his face doing a calculation that involved distance and contamination and control. Like he was removing evidence. "And take this. Whatever this is." Lorraine released the binder without resistance. Her right hand dropped to her side. The gold ring caught one flat bar of fluorescent light coming off the overhead tube, one clean glint, and went still. "Whatever this is," she repeated. Quiet, like she was reminding herself of something. A client near the wall got up from the plastic chair and moved toward the door. Not toward the conflict. Away from it. One of the background caseworkers near the bulletin board had a phone below the counter line. The screen was on. The caseworker was not hiding it anymore. Voss still had the binder at arm's length. He looked at it with the expression of a man who wants to set a thing down but cannot do so without losing the argument. He opened it to the first laminated page. He glanced at it. He raised his eyes to Lorraine. "This doesn't mean anything here," he said. "But here's what you probably already noticed." The vein was still up. The tie was more off-center. And he had not let go of the binder. He looked at the first page for 3 more seconds. Then he tucked it under his left arm and began walking her toward the door. His right hand still on her arm. Both of them in motion now, the lobby parting around them the way a lobby does when it has already decided not to intervene. Lorraine was not struggling. That is the part that stayed with every person in that room afterward. She was not struggling. She was walking. Upright, steady on the low loafers. Her face forward and composed, the slight smile-lined scar at the left corner of her mouth catching light. She was walking with a man who had his hand on her arm like she had agreed to this, and the lobby was watching like she had agreed to this, and only Lorraine knew the specific arithmetic of the next 9 minutes. There is something you need to know about that binder. Lorraine bought it at an office supply store on a Tuesday in 1999, the week she got her first placement. It cost her $14.99. She has replaced the rings twice, the cover once, same style, same dark brown, same brass clasp, and she has used it for every hearing, every review, every appeal for 23 years. The label on the inside cover is in her handwriting, L. Webb, Case Record 1999, present, below the label, a post-it note. She changes the post-it every year. This year it reads, "Bring the green section." The green section is correspondence, lease documents, property notes. The lease renewal from the May Webb Community Land Trust to the Tennessee Department of Children's Services, DCF's Regional Division, Memphis Tri-County. All 4 floors of the building they are standing in. $318,000 annual lease value. Currently at $0, Lorraine's goodwill gesture. Year 3, unannounced. The signature line at the bottom has her name already printed. Lorraine C. Webb, trustee. The lease expires in 3 weeks. Harlan Voss is carrying that document under his left arm while he walks the woman who wrote it toward the exit of the building she owns. And if you want to know what a good story looks like from the outside, that is it. They were 8 feet from the exit door when the elevator opened. At 9:31 a.m., the brushed aluminum doors slid back. The sound was the standard mechanical exhale of an elevator that has made that trip hundreds of times. Nothing dramatic about it. Darnell Webb Cousins stepped out. The room did not freeze because of the noise he made. He made no noise. He walked, in his charcoal blazer and white dress shirt and black derby shoes, the silver DCF's regional director lanyard resting on his chest, and he walked with a particular quality of stillness that belongs to people who know they do not need to hurry. He looked across the lobby. He found Lorraine immediately. He crossed in 12 steps, not fast, not slow. 12 steps at a pace that said, I know exactly where I am going, and I know what I will find when I get there. Every head in the lobby turned. Everyone. Voss's hand released Lorraine's arm. It did not release slowly, with consideration. It released the way a grip releases when the person holding it has become suddenly uncertain of the grip's authority. Fast, not violent, just sudden. Voss straightened. Voss looked at the lanyard. Darnell stopped beside Lorraine. He stood next to her at the counter, facing Voss. He did not put his arm around her. He did not make any physical demonstration. He stood beside her. That was the whole of it. The geometry of 2 people standing on the same side of a counter. He did not raise his voice. Mr. Voss, quiet, carrying farther than a shout. Open the binder to the green tab. Voss looked at him, at the lanyard, at the binder under his own arm, at Lorraine, at the lobby full of people who were not pretending to look elsewhere anymore. Not one of them. Maya Osei had both hands flat on the counter and was not breathing. Ray Delgado had his phone out. Openly, Voss looked at the binder. He opened it. He found the green tab. He turned to it. The lease renewal was on top. DCF's Regional Services Building, all 4 floors, the assessed property detail below it. The current rate, $0. The trustee's signature line, Lorraine C. Webb, the date it expired, 3 weeks from today. Below that, the full property deed. Assessed value, $14 million. Property owner, May Webb Community Land Trust. Trustee, Lorraine C. Webb, designated 2003. Voss did not turn pale gradually. He went the color of copy paper. Not from the face down, from the jaw up. The color left his jaw first, drained up through his cheeks to his forehead, and the vein that had been raised and dark went gray against skin that matched the walls. His hand, holding the page, went still. The page trembled slightly, just the paper, just from the air in the room. But his hand was motionless, which made the page's movement the only movement in his entire body. He did not speak. You've been in her building for 9 years, Harlan, Darnell said. He said it the way you state a weather condition, the same register Lorraine had used 45 minutes earlier. Learned from the same source. And she's charged you nothing for the last 3. Voss's mouth opened. No sound came out. Darnell looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at the lobby. At Maya. At Ray. At the clients in the plastic chairs, every one of them turned around now. At the phone screens no longer hidden. I'm going to need you to step away from the counter, he said to Voss. He said it without visible anger. He said it as a factual instruction, in the same even tone Voss had used for 35 minutes and with precisely the authority Voss had spent 35 minutes pretending to have. Voss stepped away from the counter. He set the binder down. Not at arm's length. He set it down directly in front of Lorraine. On the counter between them, the green tab still open to the lease renewal. His hands went to his sides. The badge reel on his breast pocket clicked twice as he moved, the retractable mechanism releasing, catching, and went still. The room did not applaud. You may be expecting that. The room did not applaud. What it did was reorder itself. Quietly, without instruction. Maya came from behind the counter. She set a paper cup of water on the counter beside the binder, close to Lorraine's hand, and went back to her station. She did not say anything. That cup of water is something Lorraine remembers. Ray Delgado, who had not spoken once in 35 minutes, who had opened his mouth and closed it and pressed the desk and done nothing, looked at Lorraine across the counter. "I'm sorry," he said. 2 words. They were not enough. Lorraine looked at him and nodded once, because she understood what it cost a career civil servant to say even that much. In that room, on record, the emergency board session convened on the 4th floor at 10:05 a.m. east-facing conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows over the Mississippi, the river flat and brown below them. Long glass table, 16 chairs, city seal on the east wall. The leather binder open at the head of the table, the deed and the lease renewal side by side, visible to every person in the room. Darnell ran the session. He ran it the way he ran everything. Prepared, specific, unhurried, he presented the 3-year lease history. The $0 rate. The $318,000 annual value that Lorraine had declined. He presented Lorraine's 23-year license record. The 12 state evaluations. The written response to the September complaint. The inspector's finding, unsubstantiated. He presented Voss's complaint history for the past 4 years. 17 revocations in the past 24 months. 14 of them single complaint-based, no verification. 11 flagged, upon review, as manufactured close, cases closed to improve quarterly numbers rather than for cause. Harlan Voss was not in the room. He had been asked to wait on the 2nd floor. He waited in his own office, the one with the narrow window over the parking structure, the policy manual with the cracked spine, the whiteboard with the case count tally in red marker. He sat in the visitor chair against the far wall, not his own chair, because his own chair was where the investigation folder now was. The board voted at 10:41 a.m. Lorraine's foster license reinstated effective immediately, with a formal written apology to be issued within 30 days. The 11 flagged cases referred to the State Inspector General for review. Voss's manufactured close complaint record referred to the same office. His supervisor authority suspended pending review. His badge surrendered by end of day. The badge reel made a small sound when it left his hands. He did not argue. He had spent 35 minutes in a lobby arguing with a woman whose building he was sitting in, and the argument was over now in a way that arguments like that end, not with a rebuttal, not with a counter-motion, but with the facts of the world reassembling themselves around their actual arrangement. The lease renewal was signed at 11:20 a.m. Lorraine sat at the glass table with the windows behind her. She used the same blue ballpoint pen she has used for every document since 1999, the one she keeps clipped inside the binder cover, the cap worn flat on one side from 23 years of clipping and unclipping. She signed her name, Lorraine C. Webb, trustee. Same signature as always. She did not press harder. She did not linger. She signed it the way she had signed the previous 8 renewals, as a matter of record, as a continuation of something that was already in motion. The room was quiet in the way that follows a thing that has been concluded. Darnell walked her to her car at 11:48 a.m. The parking lot was ordinary. November cold coming in off the river. Dry leaves on the asphalt. The DCF's Regional Services building behind them, all 4 floors of it, the linoleum lobby visible through the glass door. He said, "Thank you, Mom." That is the only time she cried. She did not cry in the lobby. She did not cry in the boardroom. She did not cry when the vote was read, or when the lease was signed, or when Voss's badge reel clicked and went quiet. She cried in a parking lot in November, because a man who had sat across from her at the round oak table when he was 7 years old and eating oatmeal and not yet ready to trust the world had said 2 words that contained all 23 years of it. She stood there for a moment with her hand on the car door. The leather binder was in the trunk. She opened the trunk and set it in. The brass clasp latched. She closed the lid. The gold ring on her right hand caught the flat afternoon light, the same cold winter light that had been landing on it all morning, and the 11 pressed into the band caught one line of it and held it for a second. Then she drove home, back to that kitchen table, same round oak, worn smooth at the edges. She made a cup of coffee and sat down, and the corkboard was there beside the refrigerator, the school photos, the crayon drawings, the laminated foster care bill of rights, Marcus's photo in the upper left corner. Same place it has always been. She does not think of herself as powerful. She never has. The $2.1 million came from May. The land trust came from May's instructions. The properties were held on principle, not ambition. The $47,000 she spent out of pocket over 23 years, she spent because a child needed school clothes, or a doctor visit, or a bus pass, and the reimbursement cycle was 6 weeks long, and a child cannot wait 6 weeks to go to school. She has charged the city $0 for 3 years because the agency was underfunded, and the children in its system were not responsible for the agency's budget shortfall. She is responsible. That is the whole of it, and here is what I want you to sit with. The system that morning was moving perfectly. It was doing exactly what it was designed to do. A complaint had been filed. A supervisor had reviewed it, or said he had. A decision had been entered. A woman in a cardigan was being walked toward the exit. The lobby was watching and saying nothing. The paperwork was on one side of the counter. The authority was on the other side. Everything in its place. And the only thing that interrupted it was a binder. Not a lawyer. Not a news crew. Not a protest. A worn brown leather binder with a brass clasp and color-coded tabs and a post-it note that said "Bring the green section." 23 years of documentation carried into a building by a woman who had learned, the hard way, that the system respects paperwork more than passion. You know someone like Lorraine. Maybe not exactly. Maybe not a foster mother, not a land trust, not a lobby in Memphis, but someone who has been carrying the proof of their own worth for longer than they should have had to. Someone whose documentation is impeccable, whose record is clean, whose preparation is flawless, and who still had to stand at a counter and watch a man slide their binder back across it without opening it. You know what that costs. The people the system is quickest to dismiss are sometimes the people the system cannot function without. Not because they have arranged it that way. Because they were responsible when no one was asking them to be, and the world is held together by people like that, and it does not always know it, and sometimes it finds out. That is what happened in Memphis on a Tuesday morning in late October. That is what happened when Harlan Voss opened to the green tab. Darnell, at the board meeting, when the vote was read, said one thing about the ring. He said, "The 11 on that band aren't a number. There are 11 reasons this city still has a functional foster care program in this district. I'm one of them. And I would like that on the record." It was on the record. If this story moved you, and I think it did, drop a comment below and tell me. Tell me about someone you know who carried their documentation for longer than they should have had to. Tell me about the Lorraines in your life. Every single story deserves to be told. If you are new here, subscribe. We tell these stories every week, and this one is not the last one. Like this video if Lorraine Webb deserves to have her name known, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Next week, a retired school principal in Baltimore gets turned away from her own community board meeting by the man she mentored for 6 years, until the deed in her purse says otherwise. You do not want to miss that one.